China makes historic move to allow Xi to rule indefinitely. Beijing, China's rubber stamp lawmakers on Sunday passed a historic constitutional amendment abolishing a presidential two-term limit that will enable Xi Jinping to rule indefinitely. The amendment upends a system enacted by former Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping in 1982 to prevent a return to the bloody excesses of a lifelong dictatorship typified by Mao Zedong's chaotic 1966-1976 Cultural Revolution. This marks the biggest regression in China's legal system since the reform and opening up era of the 1980s, said Zhang Lifan, an independent, Beijing-based political commentator. "I'm afraid that this will all be written into our history in the future," Zhang said. Voting among the National People's Congress, nearly 3,000 hand-picked delegates began in the mid-afternoon, with Xi leading members of the Communist Party's 7-member all-powerful Politburo Standing Committee in casting their votes. He placed his orange ballot paper in a red box bearing the official seal of state placed front and center on the stage inside the cavernous hall. China's Xi joins Russia, Zimbabwe and global autocrat club Beijing, with China's rubber stamp parliament voting to allow President Xi Jinping to stay in power indefinitely. Recent history offers sobering lessons to the country's ruling Communist Party. For millennia, one-man rule for life was standard under kings and emperors. But from Zimbabwe to Iraq to North Korea, modern autocrats often blunder into economic stagnation, political dysfunction and war. There is a tendency for erratic and sometimes unwise policy choices, said Erica France, a Michigan State University political scientist who studies dictatorships, in an email. Those include more belligerent foreign policy and greater likelihood of war. On paper, deleting term limits on Xi's ceremonial post as president from China's constitution is a modest change compared with the vast powers he has amassed since becoming ruling party leader in 2012, but the decision crystallized fears Beijing was discarding shared leadership developed since the 1980s. That system is meant to guard against the excesses of autocratic rule by requiring ruling party figures to give up power on schedule. Trump, voters must support GOP in Pittsburgh area House race. Moon Township, Pennsylvania. President Donald Trump told Western Pennsylvania voters Saturday night that his new tariffs were saving the steel industry and urged them to send a Republican to the House so he can keep daring those kinds of results. The president lent his way to Republican Rick Saccone in the final days of a surprisingly competitive special election outside Pittsburgh that could reverberate nationally ahead of the November midterm elections. "We need our Congressman Saccone," Trump said, unabashedly framing the race as a tune-up for the GOP's efforts to maintain its control of Capitol Hill. Hitting peak campaign mode for himself, he revived many of his favorite 2016 riffs and even touted his planned 2020 slogan, "Keep America Great." But, the president warned, "We can only do that if we elect people who are going to back our agenda," repeatedly urging his backers to support Saccone and stave off an upset by Democrat Conor Lamb in a district the president won by 20 percentage points over Hillary Clinton. "The people of Pittsburgh cannot be conned by this guy Lamb," Trump said, dismissing Lamb's efforts to run as a moderate Democrat. "He's never going to vote for us. He can say, 'I love President Trump. I don't want to meet him. I might like him.'" Shooter saw its program as path to heal after deployment. When Albert Wong returned from an army deployment in Afghanistan in 2013, he knew it had affected him. He had trouble adjusting to regular life, couldn't sleep at night and was hypervigilant about his surroundings. But when he found a treatment program for veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars who suffer from post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injuries, he saw it as a way to get help and readjust to civilian life, said Sissy Sher, who was his legal guardian and raised him for several years as a child, until he was recently expelled. On Friday, police said Wong slipped into a going-away party at the program, The Pathway Home, and took 3 employees hostage. After an hours-long standoff, Wong and the 3 female workers were all found dead. As a child, Wong had always dreamed of joining the army, said Cher, who began caring for him when he was 6 after his father died and his mother developed medical issues. "He had a lot of role models in the army," Cher said Saturday in an interview with the Associated Press. "He was patriotic and he wanted to do that forever." Putin's Russia, from basket case to resurgent superpower Moscow, Vladimir Putin and his Russia look more invincible than at any other time in his 18 years in power. Since he last faced election in 2012, Russians have invaded Ukraine, annexed Crimea, blanket-bombed Syria, been accused of meddling in the U.S. presidential election and claimed to have a scary new nuclear arsenal. "No one listened to us. You listen to us now," he said earlier this month in boasting about those new weapons. Putin will overwhelmingly win re-election as president on March 18, again, so why bother holding a vote at all? He disdains democracy as messy and dangerous, yet he craves the legitimacy conferred by an election. He needs tangible evidence that Russians need him and his great power vision more than they worry about the freedoms he has muffled, the endemic corruption he has failed to eradicate, the sanctions he invited by his actions in Crimea and Ukraine. China minister says trade war with US would be disaster. Beijing, China said Sunday that it will not initiate a trade war with the United States, but vowed to defend its national interests in the face of growing American protectionism. "There are no winners in a trade war, and it would bring disaster to our two countries as well as the rest of the world," Minister of Commerce Zhuang Shan said at a briefing on the sidelines of China's annual parliamentary session. China does not wish to fight a trade war, nor will China initiate a trade war, but we can handle any challenge and will resolutely defend the interests of our country and our people, he said. It was Beijing's latest statement on problems in Sino-US economic trade and cooperation, alluding to President Donald Trump's plan to impose heavy tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. Leader said Thursday that he was slapping tariffs of 25% on imported steel and 10% on aluminum, temporarily exempting big steel producers Canada and Mexico. Chinese leaders have threatened in the past to retaliate against raised trade barriers, but have yet to take direct action following Trump's announcement. Critics across partisan divide assail Florida's new gun law. Tallahassee, Florida. The political and legal fallout from Florida Gov. Rick Scott's decision to sign a sweeping gun bill into law following a school massacre was nearly immediate as the National Rifle Association filed a lawsuit to stop it and political candidates in both parties criticized it. Republican U.S. Rep. Ron DeSantis, who's running for Florida governor as a champion of gun rights, went on Fox News late Friday night to criticize the law, which raises the minimum age to buy rifles from 18 to 21. Extends a 3-day waiting period for handgun purchases to include long guns, and bans bump stocks, which allow guns to mimic fully automatic fire. "I think when you start getting into some of the blanket restrictions on people's Second Amendment rights, I think that is constitutionally vulnerable. I mean, think about it, you have an enumerated right in the Bill of Rights. There's really no precedent to just do a blanket ban on certain adults," DeSantis said on the show. Grieving families and student survivors from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, where a shooter killed 17 people last month, worked feverishly in recent weeks to lobby a gun-friendly, Republican-run state government. The new law fell short of achieving a ban on assault-style weapons, but it creates a so-called Guardian program enabling some teachers and other school employees to carry guns. 5 legislators seeking statewide office voted against it, as did the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida. GOP Attorney General Pam Bondi praised it, but other statewide candidates in the legislature voted against it. Commissioner of Agriculture Adam Putnam has expressed his displeasure with the age limits. _AP fact check. Trump makes bogus claim on female voters. Moon Township, Pennsylvania. President Donald Trump falsely claimed Saturday night that a majority of women voted for him in the 2016 election. His statement at a rally in support of Rick Saccone, Republican candidate in a House special election Tuesday. Trump, "Women. We love you. We love you." Hey, didn't we surprise them with women during the election? Remember? Women won't like Donald Trump. I said, have I really had that kind of a problem? I don't think so. But, women won't like Donald Trump. It will be a rough night for Donald Trump because the women won't come out. We got 52%, right? 52. The facts. Exit polls found he got 41% of the votes from women in the election, not 52%. The figure he cited, 52%, applies only to white women. The surveys of voters found that only 4% of black women and 25% of Hispanic women voted for him. Kathy Griffin to do new shows. 9 months after Trump photo New York, comedian Kathy Griffin is embarking on her comeback, some 9 months after she provoked outrage, and lost much of her work, by posing with a fake severed head that appeared to depict President Donald Trump. Griffin announced on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher on Friday night that she had just booked upcoming shows at New York's Carnegie Hall and at Washington's Kennedy Center, Trump's backyard. She called it, "I'm dipping my toes into touring again," Griffin said, adding that the Republican president and his supporters would prefer she never worked again. Griffin's appearance on Mars show, and what she called her small victorious announcement, appeared to mark the beginning of her comeback, after the backlash over the offending photo last May badly hurt her ability to work. TMZ was reporting my show cancellations in real time, she said of her stand-up tour. She also lost her longtime New Year's Eve hosting gig on CNN. Unable to tour in the United States, Griffin went overseas, performing in 23 cities and 15 countries, she said. But because she was under investigation in the United States, she was detained at every single airport, she said. Number 1 Virginia wins ACC title, 71-63 over No. 12 Carolina New York, with no one and duns, no surefire NBA lottery picks. No. 1 Virginia put together one of the most dominant seasons in the storied history of Atlantic Coast Conference basketball. Kyle Guy, Devon Hall and the Cavaliers beat No. 12 North Carolina 71-63 in the ACC championship game Saturday night to finish 20-1 against league competition. Virginia, 31-2, set a school record for victories, won the conference tournament for the second time in 5 seasons under coach Tony Bennett, and will most certainly enter the NCAA tournament as the number 1 overall seed when the field of 68 is announced Sunday. Not bad for a bunch that started the season unranked and picked to finish 6th in the ACC. I think we always knew this could be a special team, guard Ty Jerome said. Copyright 2018 The Associated Press. All rights reserved. This material may not be published, broadcast, rewritten or redistributed,